Atlanta, a city that never sleeps, where sirens echo through rain-soaked streets and justice wears many faces. But one night, justice was blind in all the wrong ways. A black woman, calm and composed, pulled over on her way home. Her only crime, not fitting someone's expectation of who should wear power. What the officers didn't know was that the woman they tried to arrest was their new chief of police. This is her story of prejudice, power, and poetic justice. Atlanta breathed in grayscale that evening, a restless city caught between day's hum and night's hush. Rain whispered against the streets like static, pooling beneath flickering traffic lights that blinked red, yellow, red again. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, not from crisis but from habit. Downtown pulsed as though the whole city had a heartbeat of engines and neon. Chief Amira Daniels sat behind the wheel of her black Lexus, windshield wipers sliding rhythmically, slicing through the curtain of rain. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. Tired eyes, calm expression, quiet command. She wore no uniform tonight, only a navy turtleneck and jeans. Her badge rested in her purse beside the passenger seat, a symbol she didn't always need to wear to feel its weight. It had been a long day, the kind that left the soul heavy, not from work, but from what work meant. First week as Atlanta's new chief of police, first black woman ever to hold the position. The papers called it historic. Amira called it overdue. She drove slowly through Peachtree Street, the skyline blurred by fog and drizzle. She'd spent the day reviewing community outreach programs, initiatives meant to heal wounds, carved by decades of mistrust between police and the people they swore to protect. It was progress, fragile but real. And yet, the rain outside reminded her how easily clarity could turn to haze. Her radio played low, a gospel tune her grandmother loved. "Keep on walking, child," the singer crooned, voice smoky, resolute. Amira smiled faintly, remembering her grandmother's hands, calloused from cleaning houses, strong from holding faith when no one else would. "Keep walking," she murmured to herself. That had always been her way. She passed the station where she'd spent 15 years climbing the ladder. From patrol officer to detective to captain, every step up had been a fight, and not always against crime. The hardest battles were waged in meeting rooms, in sideways glances, in the soft disbelief that someone who looked like her could lead. But she did, and now she led them all. Her phone buzzed. A message from Deputy Ruiz. "Tomorrow's press conference is confirmed. 10 a.m. at City Hall." Amira typed back a simple thumbs-up emoji. She didn't do long texts. Words were for moments that mattered. A traffic light turned red ahead, and she slowed to a stop. Rain tapped against her window in sync with the beat of her heart. She took a deep breath, letting the hum of the city fill the silence. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a mural. A woman painted 10 feet tall on the side of a brick building, fists raised, eyes fierce. Beneath it in bold letters, "Justice is not a favor." Amira's lips curved slightly. "No, it isn't," she whispered. When the light turned green, she drove on. The evening deepened, the world now silver and black, every reflection trembling like an uncertain truth. She loved this time of day. Dusk was honest. It didn't pretend to be bright or dark. It was the in-between where truth often lived. Her mind drifted back to her oath. She'd promised not just to enforce the law, but to rebuild its trust. That was harder than arresting any criminal. Power, she'd learned, didn't come from authority. It came from empathy. She turned down Auburn Avenue, once the heart of Black Atlanta, where echoes of Dr. King's words still clung to the air. The rain fell harder now, streaking across the windshield like ghosts of the past washing through the present. She switched on her headlights, illuminating puddles that mirrored the skyline in fractured beauty. A faint smile tugged at her lips as she imagined her mother's voice saying, "Baby, you were born to stand in storms, not hide from them." She turned the radio off. The city's sound was music enough. For a moment, she thought of stopping for coffee, maybe calling her friend Lydia, another woman who knew how lonely leadership could feel. But fatigue pulled at her. All she wanted was home. Quiet walls, a warm shower, maybe a glass of wine. The rain thickened as she neared her neighborhood, the roads glistening like veins of liquid silver. She adjusted her mirror and caught her own eyes, unwavering, thoughtful, unknowingly minutes away from a test that would echo through headlines and history alike. She didn't know it yet. But before this reign ended, her own officers, the men sworn to serve under her command, would see her not as Chief Amira Daniels, but as just another black woman behind the wheel of a nice car on a wet Atlanta night. The traffic lights ahead flickered again, painting her face in red and blue. A cruel foreshadowing. She sighed softly, turned on her signal and drove forward, into the heart of a storm she didn't yet see coming. Rain whispered like static over the city, 1,000 tiny taps against metal, glass, and memory. Downtown Atlanta shimmered in ghostly reflection, every puddle holding the echo of sirens. Chief Amira Daniels was less than 10 minutes from home now. The rain had slowed, but her thoughts still stormed. Half on tomorrow's press briefing, half on whether her department truly understood what leadership meant. She wasn't naive. Change didn't arrive on the day a black woman pinned on a new badge. It came slowly, resisted, questioned, sometimes resented. She knew that. But she also knew progress never arrived quietly. Then, in her rearview mirror, a flash of blue and red. For a moment, she thought it was just another cruiser passing through the night until the lights didn't fade. They followed, closer, persistent, her brows furrowed. Now what? She muttered, glancing at her speedometer. 34 in a 40 zone. No violation, no broken light. Nothing. She sighed and eased her car to the curb, signaling properly, just as she'd trained others to do. Irony has a cruel sense of humor, she thought, turning off her engine. 2 police officers stepped out of the patrol car. Young, mid-20s, nervous energy radiating off them in waves. She could tell instantly, rookies. The taller one, Officer Blake, adjusted his vest, trying to appear confident. His partner, Officer Mitchell, hung back slightly, glancing around as if danger might leap from the rain itself. Amira cracked her window halfway as Blake approached. "Good evening, officer," she greeted calmly. He leaned slightly forward, flashlight beaming directly into her face. "License and registration, no greeting." No explanation, just command. Amira tilted her head. "May I ask what the stop is for?" Blake frowned. "Ma'am, I'll explain once I see your license and registration." His tone was firm but brittle, the voice of someone who'd learned authority before. Empathy. She kept her expression neutral and handed over her documents. Her driver's license gleamed beneath the light. The same name plastered across Atlanta billboards last week, when the city celebrated her appointment. Chief Amira Daniels, but the rookie didn't look at the name. His eyes were fixed on her skin, her hoodie, the modest car interior. "Is this your vehicle?" he asked. "Yes," she replied evenly. "Registered in my name. You can check." Mitchell, the quieter one, circled around to the passenger side, shining his flashlight through the windows. "Mind stepping out for a moment, ma'am?" Amira's hand paused on the steering wheel. "Is there a reason, Officer Mitchell?" "Just a routine safety check," he said. Routine, a word that always meant something else. Amira exhaled slowly. "I'm an off-duty officer," she said gently. "You can confirm that on your system." "My ID is—" Blake interrupted sharply. "Ma'am, please step out of the vehicle." The tone wasn't a request. It was a presumption. Her pulse slowed, not from fear but focus. She'd dealt with confrontation before, but this carried a bitter irony. She unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door, stepping into the rain. Drops traced down her face like tiny rivers, catching the glare of the patrol lights. "Hands where I can see them," Blake said instinctively. Amira raised her hands slightly, palms open. "Officer, I understand protocol, but I'm telling you, ma'am, we'll talk after you step to the front of your vehicle." Mitchell looked uneasy now, his flashlight trembling slightly. "Blake, maybe we should—" "No," Blake cut in. "We follow procedure." Amira's jaw tightened. "Procedure is built on probable cause, officer." "Do you have any?" That gave him pause. Not because he was wrong, but because he didn't expect her to know the language of power. Mitchell's radio crackled faintly. "Unit 24, report status," he answered quickly. "Traffic stop, Auburn Avenue. Possible suspicious driver?" Suspicious driver. The phrase hung in the damp air like a curse. Amira stood still, rain matting her curls, the flashlights glaring off the water droplets on her coat. Inside, she fought the weight of memory. Of her father pulled over for matching a description. Of friends humiliated by the same system she had sworn to reform. "Officer Blake," she said quietly. "Look at my license again. Read the name." He hesitated, looked down, and squinted in the beam of his flashlight. His brow furrowed, not in recognition but in doubt. "Amira Daniels," he read. "You related to that police chief they appointed?" Her lips pressed together. "Something like that," he chuckled lightly. "Small world, huh? Step this way, ma'am." It was both condescension and dismissal. She followed, rain pooling beneath her shoes. Her patience thinned, but her composure didn't waver. Years of discipline had trained her to hold calm even when disrespected. Mitchell muttered something under his breath, almost apologetic, but didn't intervene. "Open your trunk," Blake ordered. Amira froze. "Excuse me?" Random check. Had reports of stolen vehicles matching this make and model. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You mean reports that match my car?" Blake avoided her gaze. "Just procedure, ma'am." Amira inhaled sharply. The words stung more than she'd expected, not because of fear, but because she had written the very handbook that now excused this nonsense. She opened her trunk silently. Rain splashing off the metal. Empty. Of course, Blake looked disappointed, like he'd hoped to justify his suspicion. "All right, ma'am, just stay right here," he said, walking back to his cruiser. As his shadow blurred through the rain, Amira stood still, her breath clouding in the damp air. Her voice, quiet but firm, rose into the space between thunder and restraint. "Power isn't in the badge, officer," she murmured to herself. "It's in how you treat those without one." But they didn't hear her. Not yet. Rain slid like tears down the edges of Atlanta's skyline, streaking through neon and glass. The sound of police radios echoed faintly, static layered with authority, control, and fear. Chief Amira Daniels stood beside her car, soaked through. The air around her pulsed with blue and red light, painting her face in fragments, half peace, half protest. Officer Blake was back in the cruiser, running her plates. His partner Mitchell lingered nearby, eyes darting between Amira and the computer screen glowing inside the patrol car. The tension between the two young officers was visible, like a wire stretched to breaking. Amira remained still, her spine straight, her expression unreadable. She had been trained to control adrenaline, to master silence, to carry her authority like invisible armor. But tonight, standing under flashing lights that should have represented her command, she felt the weight of centuries pressing down. The rain picked up again, cold, relentless. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "do you mind telling us where you're headed?" "Home," she replied evenly. "From where?" "The office." "What kind of office?" Amira turned her gaze toward him, calm, steady, almost surgical. "The kind you salute when you enter." He blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" Before she could answer, Blake stepped back out, holding her registration papers loosely. "System's not showing any issues," he said. "But your demeanor's giving me attitude, ma'am. We just want to make sure everything's clear." "My demeanor?" she repeated, voice low. "I've complied with every order you've given." Blake shrugged. "Yeah, but you've been defensive." "Defensive," she echoed. "Is that what you call asking why I was pulled over without cause?" Mitchell shifted uneasily, clearly realizing they'd gone too far. But Blake wasn't listening. He was trying to win the stop, as if respect were a competition. "Ma'am," he said, "step over here." "Hands behind your back." Amira's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "Just for safety," he said quickly. "We're detaining you until we verify your story." Mitchell's voice cracked. "Blake, come on, man. Procedure!" Blake snapped. "You want to explain to the sergeant why we let a suspicious driver walk?" "Suspicious driver." Again the words cut like a blunt knife. Amira looked at the wet pavement beneath her boots, then back at the officers. Her voice, when it came, was composed but heavy with disappointment. "You're making a mistake, officer." Blake rolled his eyes. "Yeah, everyone says that." "Turn around." She didn't resist, didn't raise her voice, didn't plead. She simply turned, calm, graceful, the rain tracing lines across her cheeks like war paint. Cold metal circled her wrists. The click of the handcuffs echoed like thunder through her chest. For a moment, she thought of her father, a postal worker stopped 3 times in one summer for matching a description. He used to say, "Keep your hands visible, Mira. Keep your words soft. But your pride intact." Now, she understood the full meaning of that. Mitchell looked pained. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. This'll be cleared up soon." She gave him a faint, almost motherly glance. "I know it will." As they guided her toward the squad car, she caught a glimpse of her purse lying on the passenger seat, the edge of her police badge peeking out just slightly, the silver catching the strobe of blue light. They didn't see it. They didn't think to look. The irony felt poetic. Her power, literally inches away, ignored because they never thought it could belong to her. Inside the car, the back seat smelled of vinyl and rain. She sat upright, refusing to shrink. Outside, Blake radioed something about possible resistance, his voice straining to sound professional. Mitchell avoided her eyes when he opened the door to slide in beside her. His hands trembled slightly as he typed on his tablet. She turned to him quietly. "How long have you been on the force, Officer Mitchell?" He hesitated. 4 months, ma'am." "And how many black women have you pulled over since then?" He swallowed. "A few, I guess. Do you ever ask yourself," she said softly, "why a few feels like too many?" He looked away. "I'm just doing my job." "Doing your job," she murmured, "isn't the same as doing what's right." Her words lingered, heavy and true, until even the rain seemed to pause. Blake climbed back into the driver's seat. "All right, we're heading downtown. Maybe she'll talk when she's got a sergeant in front of her." Mitchell gave her a helpless look but said nothing. The car pulled away from the curb, water splashing against the tires, washing over the pavement like spilled ink. Through the window, Amira watched the city blur, the same streets she'd once patrolled, the same neighborhoods she'd sworn to protect. It was surreal, almost absurd to see them now from the wrong side of the system she led. The flashing lights reflected faintly in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, but clarity. This was more than humiliation. It was revelation. This was the world as it truly was, stripped of titles, stripped of badges, stripped of pretense. When you remove the symbols, what remains? Character. And tonight hers would not break. The car turned sharply, heading toward the downtown precinct. As the sirens wailed and the rain intensified, Amira closed her eyes, resting her cuffed hands gently in her lap. She whispered, barely audible over the storm, "Sometimes the system must fail you before it can see you." And outside, Atlanta kept raining, washing away excuses, cleansing nothing, waiting for morning. The precinct loomed like a fortress of irony, concrete, glass, and fluorescent lights slicing through the night. Rain dripped from the awning as the squad car rolled to a stop. Chief Amira Daniels, cuffed, calm, soaked, stared out the window at the station she had commanded just days ago. Inside, her own photograph hung on the hallway wall, Atlanta's first black woman chief of police. The irony was bitter, sharp enough to taste. Officer Blake cut the siren and stepped out, his boots splashing into puddles. He looked eager to prove himself, a soldier of authority in a battle that didn't exist. "Let's move, ma'am," he said curtly, opening the back door. Amira stepped out slowly, feeling the rain hit her skin again. Steady, cleansing, unrelenting. The cuffs bit gently into her wrists. A memory flickered. Her first arrest as a rookie. A young man who'd asked her if she even was a cop. "You look too soft for this," he'd said. She'd smiled then. She wasn't smiling now. They walked through the glass doors into the bright, buzzing lobby. The shift officers inside looked up briefly, then back down, assuming it was just another routine booking. "Nothing unusual. Nothing special. Processing," Blake announced, holding her arm. "Brought in on suspicion of stolen vehicle." A clerk behind the desk glanced up. A woman named Janine, mid-40s, sharp eyes, sharper instincts. "Suspicion?" she echoed. "You got a report number?" "Not yet," Blake said. "We'll file once we finish the statement." Janine frowned, scanning Amira's calm expression. Something didn't fit. She knew that face from somewhere. Amira didn't speak. She didn't need to. Silence was her protest now. Mitchell stood behind them, shifting uncomfortably. His face was pale, lips pressed tight. He'd begun to realize what they'd done. though the full weight hadn't landed yet. Take her to holding, Blake ordered. We'll get her prints just to verify ID. Janine's eyes widened slightly. Prints, for what charge? Blake hesitated, then stiffened. Obstruction. Possible false identification? False identification? Janine repeated. Her tone carried disbelief now. Amira exhaled slowly. Officer, she said softly to Blake, do you even know what you're saying? He shot her a glare. You don't get to lecture me right now. Her gaze held steady. No, not right now, she murmured. But soon, the fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a printer sputtered. The scent of wet uniforms filled the air. The entire world felt bleached of color. A sterile stage for injustice. As Blake led her toward the holding room, Mitchell's footsteps lagged. Sir, he whispered, we should really double-check before— Enough, Blake snapped. We're doing everything by the book. The book. The one Amira herself had rewritten last year to emphasize de-escalation and anti-bias awareness. Every step she took echoed down the corridor. The same halls she had once walked as captain, then deputy chief. Her memory flickered, congratulatory handshakes, applause, cameras flashing. And now, the same floor beneath her feet felt colder, heavier. The guard at the holding door, a burly man with kind eyes named Tomas Ruiz, nodded as they approached. Evening, he said lazily. Who've we got? Female suspect, Blake replied. Possible stolen vehicle, resisting questions. Ruiz glanced at her, recognition slowly dawning. The set of her jaw, the composure, the way she stood, not like a suspect but like command personified. He froze. His eyes widened. Wait a minute, Blake frowned. What's the problem? Ruiz's voice dropped an octave. You don't know who this is, do you? Blake stiffened. Sir? Ruiz stepped forward slowly, disbelief etched across his face. He lowered his voice as though afraid of his own realization. This is Chief Daniels. The silence hit like thunder. Mitchell's tablet slipped from his hands, clattering to the floor. Blake blinked, confusion turning into dawning horror. What are you talking about? Ruiz turned toward Amira. Chief. His words trailed off, shame heavy in the air. Amira's voice came quiet but firm. It's all right, Captain. Let them finish what they started. Ruiz's throat tightened. Chief, I had no idea. Blake stepped back, color draining from his face. No, that can't be right. Her ID, I didn't— Mitchell's voice trembled. Oh my God. The entire lobby seemed to slow. Every sound muffled, every breath held. Janine stood behind the glass, eyes wide, hand over her mouth. Amira turned slightly toward the rookies, her expression unreadable. Rainwater still dripped from her hair, tracing lines of quiet dignity down her face. You see, she said softly, the problem isn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem is that it mattered. No one moved. Ruiz stepped forward and unclipped the handcuffs himself, his hands shaking. Chief, I'm so sorry. The cuffs fell open with a soft metallic sigh, freedom and shame intertwined. Amira rubbed her wrists gently, not in pain but in reflection. Her eyes met Blake's. Do you know what tonight will teach you, officer? He stammered. Ma'am, That perception without understanding, she interrupted, is the most dangerous weapon in this building. Her voice carried through the entire room. No shouting, no fury. Just truth. Ruiz looked at the two rookies. You two are done for the night. Go home, Blake hesitated. Sir, Go, Ruiz said again, sharper. As they left, Mitchell turned back once, eyes filled with guilt. Chief Daniels? I'm sorry. I really am. Amira gave a small nod. Then let your actions say that next time. When the door closed, she exhaled slowly, finally allowing the air to leave her lungs. Ruiz offered her a towel, his face red with embarrassment. Chief, this is unacceptable. I'll file a report myself. She stopped him gently. No, I'll handle it, Ruiz frowned. But they humiliated you, she met his eyes. And now I have the chance to teach them what leadership looks like. He swallowed hard, then nodded. She turned toward the rain-streaked glass of the station's front doors, the city beyond still glowing faintly under the storm. Her reflection stared back, weary but undefeated. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about reckoning, Amira whispered softly as if to herself. Sometimes the storm you walk through, is the lesson others need to see. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the narrow booking room, their harsh glow bouncing off the cold gray walls. Amira sat silently on a metal bench, her wrists still cuffed. A faint trickle of blood had formed where the steel dug into her skin. The air smelled of damp concrete, cheap coffee, and stale regret. Officer Harlow stood by the desk, typing up the incident report, his jaw clenched. His partner, Officer Reed, paced back and forth, occasionally glancing at Amira, not with guilt, but with unease. Something about her stillness unnerved him. "Occupation?" Harlow muttered, half distracted. Amira looked up, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Chief of Police." Harlow smirked without looking up. "Yeah, and I'm the mayor." She didn't respond, just watched him type, her gaze steady, unflinching, unreadable. The door swung open suddenly, and the sound of brisk footsteps filled the room. The air shifted. Lieutenant Gregson, the watch commander on duty, strode in, tall, broad-shouldered, and carrying years of authority in his stride. He was speaking to someone behind him but stopped mid-sentence the moment his eyes fell on Amira. His face froze. It took a split second for recognition to hit. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally a gut punch of horror. His clipboard clattered to the floor. "Chief Daniels?" His voice trembled slightly. The room went silent. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade. Harlow looked up from his desk, frowning. "Chief who?" Gregson's jaw tightened. "Chief Amira Daniels, the new chief of police for the city of Atlanta." Reed blinked, his mouth falling open. "Wait, what? No, sir, that can't be right. She didn't have ID." Amira slowly raised her cuffed wrists. "You didn't ask for it." Gregson's face flushed red. He rushed forward, fumbling with the keys to unlock her cuffs. His hands shook as the metal clicked open. "Ma'am, I am so sorry." Amira stood, rubbing her wrists. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with quiet power. "You have nothing to apologize for, Lieutenant." "They do." Reed stammered. "Chief, we thought you were—" She turned to him, her words cutting through his excuses like glass. "You thought I was what, officer? A threat? A statistic? Another face that didn't belong behind the wheel of a nice car after dark?" Silence. Only the sound of rain hitting the glass outside. Gregson cleared his throat nervously. "Chief, this is a terrible misunderstanding. I'll make sure this is handled properly." Amira's tone was soft. Too soft. "Oh, it will be handled. By me." Harlow took a hesitant step forward, regret flooding his expression now that the reality had sunk in. "Chief Daniels, we didn't mean any disrespect. We were just—" She turned toward the window, her reflection staring back, proud, unbroken. "You meant exactly what you did," she said quietly. "That's the problem." The room was heavy with shame. Gregson finally spoke, his voice low. "Chief, I'll file a full report to Internal Affairs." "No," Amira interrupted. "There's a better way to make this right. Tomorrow morning, I want these two officers in my office at 800 hours. I'll handle their education personally." Reed swallowed hard. "Chief, please." Amira looked over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. "Lesson 1. When you wear this uniform, you serve justice, not judgment." And with that, she walked out, leaving silence, and the echo of her words behind her. Gregson let out a long breath. "You boys just arrested your new boss," he muttered. Harlow sank into the nearest chair, staring at the open door as the rain continued to fall outside. "God help us," he whispered. The next morning, the Atlanta Police Department headquarters gleamed under a sharp winter sun. Its glass facade reflected the city's skyline, tall, proud, and full of contradictions. Inside, whispers floated through the corridors like a current of static. Everyone had heard the story. 2 rookies had mistakenly arrested the new chief of police. Inside her office on the top floor, Chief Amira Daniels stood before a large window overlooking downtown Atlanta. She wore her full uniform, crisp, perfectly pressed, the gold badge glinting under the morning light. On her desk sat a folder marked Officer Conduct Training Initiative. She was ready. At precisely 8 a.m., a soft knock came at the door. "Enter," she said without turning around. Officers Harlow and Reed stepped in, both in formal uniform, both looking uneasy. The air between them and the chief was thick, part tension, part regret. They saluted, unsure whether to speak. Amira finally turned to face them. Her gaze was sharp but steady, not angry, not vengeful, but heavy with something deeper. "Close the door," she said. They obeyed. She gestured toward 2 chairs opposite her desk. "Sit." They sat, their posture stiff, eyes flicking between her and the floor. Amira leaned forward slightly, folding her hands. "Do you know what yesterday was?" Reed hesitated. "Your first week as chief, ma'am." She nodded. "Correct, my first week. And within that week I was stopped, detained, and humiliated by 2 of my own officers. Not because I broke the law, but because I looked like someone who could. Neither officer spoke. You didn't run my plates. You didn't ask for identification. You didn't follow procedure. You saw a black woman behind the wheel of a car you didn't think she belonged in, and you made a decision based on that assumption." Her tone was calm, but her words landed like thunder. Harlow swallowed. "Chief Daniels, we made a mistake." Amira stood, walking around her desk to face them directly. "A mistake is forgetting a citation form. What you did was a reflection of bias, the kind that infects entire systems if it isn't addressed." She gestured toward a large screen behind her desk, where a presentation slide appeared. "Internal Bias and Police Accountability Workshop." "You'll be attending this training for the next 4 weeks," she said, "but not as students, as case studies. You will share your story, your thought process, and your consequences, because change doesn't come from lectures. It comes from owning your actions." Reed shifted uncomfortably. "Chief, with respect, do we have to?" Amira cut him off with a look. "Yes, you have to. You'll stand before every recruit, every veteran officer, and explain how you mistook your own chief for a suspect. And you'll help me build a department that sees people, not profiles." The room went silent again. After a long pause, Harlow spoke softly. "Chief, we're sorry, truly. We didn't think—" "That's the problem," she interrupted. "You didn't think. You reacted. You let fear and prejudice steer your badge." Her voice softened now, almost gentle. "I've spent my career fighting for the idea that we could be better, that we could protect without prejudice. Yesterday you reminded me why that fight can't stop." She walked back to her chair, sat down, and looked at them firmly. "You will both remain on active duty, but your first assignment begins now, as part of the Bias Awareness and Community Trust Program. You'll meet victims of profiling, you'll listen to their stories, and you'll learn what accountability feels like." Reed nodded quietly. "Yes, ma'am." Amira's expression softened for the first time. "This isn't about humiliation. It's about growth. The uniform doesn't make us right. The badge doesn't make us righteous. Only how we treat others does." She leaned back, her voice reflective. "When I joined this force, I believed power came from rank, from commanding rooms, from earning medals. But I've learned something different. Power isn't in the badge." Her gaze drifted to the window again, to the city below. Alive, flawed, beautiful. "It's in how you treat those without one." The words hung in the air, echoing in the silence. Harlow and Reed stood, their faces somber but changed. They saluted once more, this time not out of protocol, but out of respect. As they left the room, Amira sat quietly for a long moment, breathing deeply. The city outside moved on. Cars, voices, rain starting to fall again. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer. Respect should never depend on recognition. True power is quiet, but undeniable. And for the first time since that night, she allowed herself a small, knowing smile. Weeks passed. The story of the chief who was arrested by her own officers spread far beyond Atlanta's precinct walls. It made local headlines, talk shows, and social media feeds. Some mocked, some sympathized. But most were forced to look inward. Inside the Atlanta Police Department, a shift had begun. quiet at first, like a tremor before an awakening. The Bias Awareness and Community Trust Program, once treated as a checkbox course, was now the department's beating heart. Every Thursday morning, the training hall filled with uniforms. Veterans, rookies, supervisors, all sitting shoulder to shoulder, listening as Officers Harlow and Reed stood at the front of the room. They spoke without scripts, without excuses. "We thought we were doing our jobs," Harlow said one morning. "But the truth is, we were doing what we'd been taught. To fear before understanding, to assume before asking." That night I looked at a woman who'd achieved everything I wanted to be, and I saw a suspect instead of a leader. The room was still. Amira watched from the back, arms folded, her expression unreadable. She wasn't there to humiliate them. She was there to witness change. And she saw it, in their tone, in their eyes, in the silent nods of officers who recognized a reflection of their own biases. After the session, a young recruit approached her. "Chief Daniels," he said softly, "before this program, I thought the world just exaggerated racism. But hearing them talk, seeing what happened to you, it made me realize it's not about guilt. It's about awareness." Amira smiled faintly. "That's where justice begins, when awareness replaces denial." Later that evening, she stood outside the precinct alone. The sun dipped low over Atlanta's skyline, painting the clouds in hues of gold and violet. The city hummed, sirens in the distance, laughter from a food truck line, the rhythm of life carrying on. She thought about her father, a sanitation worker who'd taught her dignity wasn't earned by title but by treatment. "Baby girl," he used to say, "respect ain't something you wait for. It's something you give even when the world don't give it back." The memory tightened her chest, but it also filled her with strength. From behind her, footsteps approached. It was Reed. No uniform tonight, just jeans and a gray hoodie, humility in his step. "Chief," he said quietly, "I just wanted to thank you. You could have ended our careers that night, but instead you gave us a chance to learn." She turned to him. "What you did was wrong, officer. But punishment alone doesn't build better people. Education does. Empathy does." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I understand that now. I really do." Amira gave a small nod of approval. "Good. Because one day someone else will make the same mistake you did, and it'll be your job to stop them." As he walked away, Amira looked up at the darkening sky, the city lights flickering on like stars against glass towers. She whispered, almost to herself, "Change doesn't roar. It whispers. It begins in quiet rooms, in awkward conversations. In the moment someone decides to listen instead of react." She turned back toward the building. Her precinct, her responsibility, her mission. A week later, the department hosted its first community reconciliation forum. The room was filled with citizens, pastors, activists, shop owners, single mothers, all gathered to speak directly with officers in an open dialogue. When Amira took the podium, the crowd fell silent. She looked out at the faces, some skeptical, some hopeful, and began. "Every uniform carries weight. But that weight isn't power, it's responsibility. The badge doesn't make you superior, it makes you accountable." She paused, letting the words settle. "I learned that power doesn't come from commanding respect. It comes from deserving it, from standing in front of someone vulnerable and saying, 'I see you. I hear you. I will protect you, not because of who you are, but because it's my duty to do so.'" The crowd erupted in quiet applause. Some wiped tears. Even the reporters lowered their cameras for a moment. Just to listen, Amira continued, her tone steady. "Doleful. I was profiled by my own department, and I forgave. Not because I was weak, but because forgiveness is the only soil where change can grow. I will never forget that night. But I also won't let it define who we are. We can be better. We will be better." She looked out over the crowd, her eyes glimmering under the soft lights. Power isn't in the badge. It's in how you treat those without one. The applause that followed was long, not loud, but meaningful. The kind that came from the chest, not just the hands. As she stepped down from the stage, a young black girl in the front row, maybe 10 years old, stood up and saluted her with tiny, trembling fingers. Amira smiled, returning the salute. For the first time in months, her heart felt light. Outside, rain began to fall again. Soft, cleansing, rhythmic. Amira stood under the awning, watching it hit the streets. The city reflected itself in the puddles. Cars, lights, people. Blurred but beautiful. Respect should never depend on recognition, she murmured. True power is quiet, but undeniable. She straightened her uniform, feeling its weight, not as armor, but as purpose. Then she walked into the rain, her reflection merging with the city she'd sworn to protect. And for the first time in a long time, Atlanta felt a little more just. They thought the badge made them powerful, but real power doesn't shout. It listens. It humbles itself before it leads. That night, I learned something I should have known all along. That strength isn't measured by rank or title, but by how you treat people when no one's watching. I could have answered judgment with anger, but I chose grace instead. Because forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the start of transformation. Power isn't in revenge. It's in restraint. It's in the decision to break the cycle instead of continuing it. Every time we wear this uniform, we have a choice to be enforcers of fear or guardians of justice. And so I carry this truth. Power isn't in the badge. It's in how you treat those without one. Respect should never depend on recognition. Because true power is quiet but undeniable.